Okay, the third book that I'd like to review is Triggers: How We Can Stop Reacting and Start Healing by David Richo, however you want to say it. He is a psychiatrist with a PhD, and you know, he's written lots of other books, and they're about the same thickness and size and depth of this book. Um, I was a little disappointed with this book, to say the least. I felt like he was just checking a box by writing it. His examples were generic. They weren't personal. They weren't really salient. It seemed like he Googled a lot of quotes instead of having the knowledge in himself. Um, which, which is okay, that's fine. Um, but it just seemed very, I don't know if boilerplate is the term to use, but it just seemed kind of generic. It just seemed like these are the right things to say. This is the accepted knowledge on these topics. And it seemed as if he didn't really have, maybe I'm just being a snob, but compared to, say, M. Scott Peck's work, which was extremely personal and was based off his own practice and was based off of his own intuition, and he took risks when he wrote the books. Whereas this guy, he didn't really take risk. He didn't really put any skin in the game. There was nothing really there. And while he had a lot of good points, um, which he was taking from other people, and from his practice and stuff like that, while he had a lot of good points, he didn't spend enough time on any of those points for you to really grasp what he was trying to say through them. So he would just go racing over this topic that should have taken 50 pages on its own, and he would do it in a page. And then he'd move on to the next topic and then do it in a page. And you're like, it was very confusing, it was very quick, and it just was not, he didn't give the time necessary to actually, that each topic needed, and that he really would have been better served to just write on one type of trigger. He was writing about trying to write all of the types of triggers in a 175 page book. It's too big of a topic to wrap into that small of a book, I think, unless you're a much better writer. Gabor Mate did something similar with When the Body Says No, but he did an extremely good job because he was a very good writer, and he did it in 300 pages and was able to consolidate it and give you a very clear image of what was going on. Anyway, all of that to say, it just didn't do it for me. And truthfully, what I walked away from the book with was really just disappointment. And like, I might as well just go and Google how to fix my triggers. I might as well go and just like ask somebody. So if I'm triggered because I'm angry about this, if I have a sadness trigger or an anger trigger or whatever trigger it is, what should I do about that? Like, I can find this knowledge on the internet by just Googling which was kind of disappointing. Like, the point of writing a book and getting people to buy your book is that you have a unique take on it that's yours and that's different than mainstream or different than what other people are saying. It gets back to the idea of risk, which I think is devoid in today's society. It's just not there. There's not a lot of risk, which is because we're living in the whole cancel culture situation, which I understand is difficult to take risk if you have clients and you have a reputation to protect and all of that stuff. I think it was easier in the 50s and 60s when Scott Peck was writing and he was a pioneer in his time. And interestingly enough, Scott Peck used a lot of references from books, but he made his own conclusions, and he used those books to build a repertoire of knowledge that helped him help his patients. This guy, I don't know. It seemed very self-helpy, and it just seemed sloppy and lazy. Which, he's got a PhD, so he jumped through the hoops and he did the thing. But it just did nothing for me. So you could read it. You could not read it. I'm sure there are better books out there on triggers, and I'm sure you could probably do your own research and find a more complete answer to the issue of triggers of all types. I don't have specifics because nothing in the book was memorable enough to be specific. And that's saying something because I usually remember almost every detail of every book I read. So for him to have glossed over that many important topics that quickly and to have done that poor of a job, probably don't read the book. Triggers is not really worth it. Anyway, those are the last 3 that I've been working through. That's been the last couple of months, I think, that I've been working through them. Yeah, the majority of the summer and into fall. Right now, I'm taking a little break and reading some brain candy. I deeply enjoy reading Terry Pratchett, and so I have been reading that for the past couple weeks. There's a whole thing that you should read 10 pages a day or 50 books a year or whatever it is. That's fine as long as you can usually do that if you're not working a job and if all you're doing all day long is reading, which I understand Warren Buffett and Bill Gates and people like that are now because they're there. They arrived. They got the $100 billion or whatever, and they're doing really, really well with that. So now they can sit and read all day long. I work a day job, as I am sure you guys do. And so if you do, I like to read at night as I'm going to bed. It helps to disconnect my mind from the anxieties through the day that come up, and it helps me to quiet my mind and take some time. It's a ritual that I have before I go to sleep. And I definitely notice it if I don't read before sleep. Anyway, all of that to say, don't feel bad if you're having trouble getting through some of the books that you're reading. Just keep reading. Try and focus. Try and take something from the books. If you can apply it personally, that's usually a good sign that you're absorbing what you're reading. That's been my attempt through reading these books, is to try and make some kind of personal application and build something and keep building something so that I'm not just reading to read or reading to stroke my ego or reading to perform and appear that I'm so smart and know so much. Because the truth is, I read 3 books and I know less now than I did before because now I've got more questions because of the books. Or maybe I just know that I don't know as much. I don't know. Whatever it is. All that to say, don't get burnt out. Reduce your carb intake and you'll want to read a little bit more. If you can find a friend to have a conversation with about the books that you're reading, it helps to process it if you can verbalize it. Otherwise, it kind of just knocks around in your head and then you tend to forget it. That's been my experience, at least. If I don't verbalize it, if I don't get it out, if I don't recap it in some way, then I tend to forget it because I think my body or my brain just decides that, it wasn't worth it and it doesn't store it. So there's that. And then, of course, obviously, if you're not getting enough sleep or good enough sleep, quality sleep, then you're not going to store memories that you take in. So that's the whole hippocampus sponge thing. The sponge gets oversaturated, then you don't take any new memories in, you don't retain any new knowledge. That's where the whole Alzheimer's thing kicks off. When you don't get enough sleep, that's what happens. Anyway, that's just a little side note. Hopefully that helps you guys out. Don't bother buying the book Triggers by David Richo because you can find the stuff you need to find on Google if you're enterprising and you want to. Anyway, take care. That'll be it for now until I finish another book. I think the next one I'm going to read is either On Death and Dying by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, which is apparently a classic, or I'm going to read Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goldman. So I'll do a review on those coming soon.